Welcome back, and we have an interesting topic today. I hope you're feeling hungry. Where's Reverend Phyllis? What a great talk title. How big a piece? And I saw there was a pie that you used to demonstrate a piece. So over to you. Would you welcome Reverend Phyllis for today's message? Thank you.
Thank you, Reverend Phyllis. Reverend Phyllis, my goodness me. Reverend Bill, get your head in place, Phyllis. I imagine that you, from the picture that we saw in the newsletter, you know what a pie looks like. You know what I'm talking about when I say a piece of pie. But often we use a pie shape to illustrate a chart. Now, Wikipedia explains a pie chart is a circular statistical graphic which is divided into slices to illustrate numerical proportion. In a pie chart, the arc length of each slice is proportional to the quantity it represents. How many of you used a pie chart to show things? Our local government council uses the pie chart often to show us how they use our rates to develop the area. But we could also create a pie chart to illustrate how we use our 12 indwelling powers or faculties, or even other attributes that we have expressed during each day or week. And some of those attributes might be joy, humanity, or humility, forgiveness, peace, or even gratitude, as we heard about earlier. We could gauge all number of things at the end of the day. And the interesting thing is that each day, that pie chart that we create for the same attributes could and probably would express something different. Today, the amount of peace that I feel and express may differ from the amount of peace I expressed yesterday or even tomorrow. And I'm sure you get the idea. When I was in ministerial school, it seems so many years ago, but I still remember this incident very clearly. I was flying back to Unity Village from Australia, having spent a couple of weeks here in our long, their summer holidays. And of course, landed in Los Angeles. The flight arrived late, and so my luggage couldn't automatically be transferred to my connecting flight. So I had to take my huge suitcase with me. Instead of remembering the Unity principle number 3, which states, I create my experience by what I choose to think and what I feel, I went into panic mode, focusing my thoughts and feelings on the possibility of missing my connecting flight and having to spend a night in Los Angeles, not something I really look forward to. Although it was in full view when I entered the appropriate terminal, I walked right past the checkout area for my connecting flight. And trudging up an escalator, dragging my huge suitcase behind me, I found myself in the arrival area, knowing this was definitely not where I needed to be. So, of course, I trudged back down to the ground floor, only to realise what my panic had done and had led me on a merry chase. After all that panic and stress, I learned that my connecting flight was delayed, and I had plenty of time to contemplate the stress and panic I had just put myself through. In my panic, I allowed myself to forget the lessons that I had been learning and putting into practice during the past several years. Instead of turning within for guidance, I let my sense consciousness take over. Had I been asked at the end of that day to create a pie chart, simply indicating the amount of peace or stress that I was expressing, I know which piece would have been the larger, and it certainly would not have been peace. So how do we know when we are experiencing peace? Well, Emily Cady wrote, In that day when more than riches and honour and power and selfish glory, you shall desire spiritual understanding, in that day will come to you the revelation of God or the divinity in you, and you will be conscious of the indwelling Father, who is life and strength and power and peace. We experience harmony with all of life when we are experiencing peace. Eric Butterworth tells us the way to achieve that, or to achieve peace, is to expand our circle of love. When we are in a peaceful place and expressing peace, we become an influencer of peace. When you expand that circle of love, you become an instrument of world peace. And Eric says, love is the answer. Peace is an inside job. It's not something we can find without. As the Buddha said, the only way to bring peace to the earth is to make our own life peaceful. It is not about excluding ourselves from life or excluding ourselves from a busy, productive life. It's about keeping a calm, peaceful mind in the midst of chaos. Not what I did all those many years ago in LA. And I don't always live from that space. And often, if I look back at a situation, I become aware that I did not keep my mind stayed on the divine within and keep my thoughts positive. Remember, peace comes from within. Do not seek it without. Charles Fillmore in Revealing Word wrote, and I quote, "Peace is harmony and tranquility derived from awareness of the Christ consciousness." He goes on to say, steadfast affirmation of peace will harmonize the whole body structure and open the way to attainment of health conditions in mind and body. When we keep our thoughts and feelings peaceful by not giving power to any thoughts that are turbulent, stressful, or angry, and affirm peace, we can be a peacemaker in our own lives and also be an inspiration for peace in other lives. I had been heartened several weeks ago by the fact that many nations had endeavoured to find a diplomatic solution to the situation that was reported in Ukraine, rather than use force to disarm the tensions that had been reported as a result of the build-up of Russian troops and armoury on the border of Ukraine. It really saddened my heart this week to hear that Russia had declared war on Ukraine and in recent days had in fact invaded the country. But why? Why, I asked myself. What does Russia have to gain? I was ignorant of the fact that Ukraine is the second largest country in Europe, next to Russia, and has a population in excess of 44 million. And it is a major supplier of many, many commodities that the world relies on. And one commentator stated how important it is that to the rest of the world that Ukraine remains independent. Well, of course, it seems Russia doesn't want that to happen. But as Albert Einstein said, peace cannot be kept by force. It can only be achieved by understanding. There doesn't seem to be a lot of understanding going on in the world today. To me, there does not seem that understanding, rather a demonstration of greed and power. What can we as individuals do? Well, we can learn to recognize and understand other nationalities, creeds, and cultures. And with an understanding of these differences, help us as individuals to maintain a level of peace within and within the world at large. And as our song that we sing at the end of the service says, let peace begin and let it begin with me. So we can only find peace in a place, can we only find peace in a place of quiet? Or can it be experienced in times of trouble and strife or hard work? Often we may turn to meditation to find that peaceful place. And if we spend time in quiet contemplative meditation regularly, we are more likely, but not always, able to maintain a calm peace within in the midst of chaos. Again, we need to remind ourselves to affirm peace, and that can be helpful in all situations. While getting stuff together to write this talk, and I did it for Brisbane last week, so it was a couple of weeks ago that I actually wrote this. But I found this quote by that very prolific writer, Anonymous, that says, peace. It does not mean to be in a place where there is no noise, trouble, or hard work. It means to be in the midst of those things and still be calm in your heart. So what stops us from experiencing that peace and harmonious place, no matter what's going on around us, moment by moment? We are spiritual or divine beings, and at the same time, we are human. And sometimes it's our humanity that is more to the fore. And it's at those times that our human expectations are so strong that if those expectations are not met, we lose that calm peace. Some expectations that may keep us from being at peace with ourselves and the world are expectations of the behaviour of others, or expectations of the service that we may expect to receive at a store, or the quality of products that we buy, or even expectations of what the weather might be today. Some people lose their peace and tranquility very easily if just one thing goes out of place in their planned daily activities. Expectations are often a result of judgments or attachments to outcomes. We can get quite indignant when people don't behave in the manner that we expect. Recently, well, actually, it was before Christmas, my sisters and I were planning a get-together in order to celebrate my birthday at the time. And they suggested that we invite two cousins who happen to be twins. And it seems that I'm the only one who has their contact numbers. I was the main person that actually connected with them unexpectedly after about 50 years of no contact with them. So it's quite fun to be able to reconnect with them. But anyway, it seems that in the 2 or 3 years since I made that connection, I've been the one that's been making all the contact with those twins. And I was getting rather indignant. This should be a two-way street, I'm thinking, but I don't hear from them unless I ring them. And so when early February, or it might have been late January, my sisters and I got together and decided that we would have this catch-up lunch just last week. I decided, well, I'm not going to ask the twins. They don't keep in contact with us. Why should I ask them? And I told this to my sister, my younger sister. And she said, oh, that's okay. No worries. She wasn't concerned. But anyway, that night, after coming home and doing everything I needed to at home, and I went off to bed, I was very aware of a very unhealthy, unpleasant unease within me. And I had to look and think, now what's that all about? And I realized that I was very much out of integrity, because I had told the twins that, yes, I would let them know when my sisters and I were going to catch up. And so the very next morning, first thing, I rang the twins and said, we're catching up for lunch at such and such a place and at this time, if you can join us. We had the most wonderful catch up that day. We laughed, we reminisced, and did all, had just such fun. And so I was so thrilled that I let go of my expectation and invited the twins to join us. Charles Fillmore wrote in Keep a True Lent, we all want to be of some influence in establishing world peace, whether we realise it or not, I believe. To do so, we must learn to obey Paul's exhortation, which is, let us therefore follow after the things which make for peace. Charles goes on to write, each one of us must be concerned with improving his own life. We must learn to deny our selfish impulses and be obedient to impulses of brotherly love. How true those words are. Deny our selfish impulses and be obedient to the impulses of brotherly love. Another attitude that very often holds us out of that place of peace is unforgiveness. Forgiveness, as I'm sure you have heard many times before, is not for the other. It is simply for us and our well-being and our peace of mind. With unforgiveness floating around in our minds, we are unlikely to be truly at peace with ourselves or the world. What's the answer? Love, of course. Love is the answer to unforgiveness. It may be we need to forgive ourselves. Therefore, we need to love ourselves. It may be another that we have held unforgiving thoughts towards, and so we need to love and see the Christ in them. Either way, love is the answer and helps us to maintain peace and calm in our lives. So peace is, inner peace is the feeling of peaceful harmony within life. How do we achieve that? Being aware of when we have expectations of ourselves or others and not being attached to outcomes, letting go of judgments. And if we find ourselves holding on to judgmental thoughts, we need to let them go, forgive ourselves, and change our attitude and feeling. I find the interesting thing about all these stumbling blocks that I have mentioned is that they can easily be erased with a good dose of love and understanding. Isn't it great to know we are masters of our own mind and we can make those changes necessary to express a peaceful self to the world and be an influencer for world peace and express a bigger piece of peace each day. So let me leave you with a quote by Jimi Hendrix. I was most surprised when I read this one to think that Jimi Hendrix actually wrote it or said it. He said, when the power of love overcomes the love of power, the world will know peace. Let me repeat that. When the power of love overcomes the love of power, the world will know peace. Let us all be peacemakers. Pray for peace, meditate on peace, and trust that peace will be maintained sooner rather than later in the world. God bless.
Wow, thank you, Reverend Phyllis. We needed to hear that, definitely. That was amazing. And the gospel according to Jimi Hendrix. Who would have thought? Thank you. And we have a good